of whispering going on here. Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody, for coming today, and also for the invitation to do this. And I shouldn't be nervous because I'm talking about me, and I know about me. So, okay. All right. Okay, so it was 1992. I had a broken knee, a broken truck, a broken heart, a broken wallet, and a crazy, destructive, adorable puppy. And I was really just a small town girl living in a lonely world. I was waitressing, and I really wanted to explore the world. And then March of 1992, there was a chance meeting with a couple that was sitting in my section at work. Some of you perhaps know these two people, Bob Prentice, better known as Whoa Bob, and CC Rock. And they told me about this program in Antarctica that I could go there and work for 5 months, refill my wallet, and then be able to travel around New Zealand. I thought, great, where's Antarctica? So I ended up begging for a job for a summer, and then I waited for a budget to be approved. And then I was on my way to New Zealand and on to Antarctica. And actually, my story does not differ much from many contract workers. We all go the first time for the adventure, the second time for the money, the third times really don't fit in anywhere else. Next week, I'm about to embark on my 22nd deployment. I don't quite know what that says about me. All right, so I'm gonna step back and go and take a look at what was happening in 1992 and then compare what's happening to today. And I think you're gonna see the similarities uncanny. So back then we were on the heels of the Hill and Thomas hearings. We were addressing the inequality of race with the Rodney King LA riots. We had, I can read here. President Clinton was elected, and 1992 was dubbed the year of the woman because so many, the number of congresswomen that were voted into Congress, 94 additional were voted into the House, and actually 4, which meant there were 6 in the Senate. Internet and technology really wasn't a thing. I'm gonna talk about the technology in a bit. Whereas today, we're on the heels of the Ford Kavanaugh hearings. We're still addressing race inequality, and we're still reeling from the riots that happened in Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland, after the deaths of 2 unarmed African-American men. Back in 1992, we also had Hurricane Andrew and Hurricane Iniki. One destroyed Miami, the other one destroyed Kauai. Now Hurricane Dorian destroys the Bahamas. And we keep asking ourselves, why are these hurricanes getting stronger and stronger year after year? President Trump is in the 4th year of his presidency. More women in 2018 were voted into Congress than any time in history. And now it's all about data and technology. It's all about social media, and technology is ubiquitous, and it's all about social media, data, and digitizing stuff. So now women, they have access to #MeToo. Women have actually been taking down industries that have seen unfair treatment to women. Think of sports, Hollywood, media, and actually big business as well. So back to my story. I stepped off that C5. I flew down my first season on the C5, so I didn't understand what all the problem was, and I learned the next year when I went on the C-141. But I got off the plane from the C5 onto that sea ice. I was a child of the 70s, and I watched The Omen, and I could not understand how you could actually land a plane on frozen water. You don't go on frozen water. I remember that from the movie. But I was really taken immediately by the beauty and how amazing this continent was. The other thing I noticed as well is that I looked at all the people that had seen each other from years that they've been for the 2nd year, the 3rd year, the 4th year, and they're all returning. They were so excited to see each other. And I thought, one day, I want to be a part of that. So I reported to work the next day, and I went to a building called 136. I had no idea what I was in store for, but I walked in, and it turned out to be the plumbing warehouse. And I learned First of all, that there's a lot of plumbing parts in Antarctica, and that it was a windowless building, and that there was no bathroom. And then I looked around and I saw that there were actually 6 employees and 4 of us were women. That's pretty impressive. So I met Karen Schwal, and she was my first manager, and she was manager of logistics. She was also just retired from the military as a captain. She was actually really important to how I further got involved in the Antarctic program. Cindy Hale was the supply senior and provided the daily tasking and entertainment. So as the days passed and the weeks passed, what I realized that there were a lot of amazing, creative, tenacious, hardworking, and fun-loving community members. I was getting out of the warehouse and doing some really fun and cool stuff. I was assisting the linemen out of the sea ice runway to get the power wires strung. I also was able to map some cargo lines with the surveyor and actually created the first map of Antarctica with the cargo lines. And then I also got to go to Happy Camper School. And yes, I did the same thing of trying to stop myself going down a hill, and I wasn't successful at that. And so then I also looked around and I noticed that there were so many women doing so many cool things. There was a woman, Jill Ferris, that was running the REI of McMurdo, better known as the Byrd Field Center. There was women scheduling helicopters, working in IT, working in cargo, actually running the South Pole Cargo Department. They were building field camps, managing those field camps. They were doing the resupply for the camps. There was project management. And you know what? There were endless opportunities, and I was hooked. Of course, we have social time in Antarctica too. We work very hard. We also can play hard. So we can walk out to Hut Point where there's a historical hut that you can see. We have Halloween. We have Thanksgiving, of course, and we always have a great dinner. We could go out onto the sea ice that I swore I'd never get on, but we go out to the sea ice caves. And then we had holiday party at Christmas time. And last, but I have to say that I would like to elaborate on ice stock, but I don't have time. Ice stock is the best thing ever. Okay, so I deployed for 2 more seasons, consecutive seasons after that. The next season, I returned in that same warehouse, counted the same plumbing parts. And then the following season, I actually was the night dispatcher in the fuels department. So when I deployed in 1992, I would say that the military was about a 50-50 ratio between the civilians and the military, because the civilians were starting to take over a lot of the support from the military all through the 90s. And by the end of the 90s, it was much more of a civilian base than it was military. So after that season, I decided to take I decided that I didn't want to go back to Antarctica, at least not the following season, and I ended up taking 5 years off. I moved to Portland, Oregon, and got some experience being an IT trainer, doing software implementation. I moved back to Denver in 1998. I worked for a big consulting firm, and then in 2000, I ran into Rob Robbins, and he told me that it was time to come back in the fold. He was right. I returned on July 10th, 2000 as the IT trainer. And I deployed in 2001 to train some of the contract workers. So when I took my break for those 5 years, one of the reasons I really wanted to return is because I really wanted to go to South Pole. So I deployed in 2001 and I was on my way to South Pole. A friend of mine said, hey, do you mind taking this new thing? It's called a digital camera to South Pole and take some pictures of South Pole, because I realized that I'm never going to get to South Pole. So I would just like to get some digital pictures. Now, I don't know how to work this thing, but it can't be that complicated, can it? Right. So I get down there. I can't get it to work. I return the camera back to him, and I said, I'm real sorry. Didn't get any pictures of the South Pole. And he said, oh, that's okay. I'll send it with somebody else. 2 weeks later, he said, you got your pictures from the South Pole. So everybody else has their hero shot from South Pole. Clearly, I was confused by the whole thing. All right. So when I returned in 2000 to the program, I realized that there were women that were really taking on leadership roles in the program. BK Grant was at the time the IT manager at South Pole and later would become the station manager at South Pole. And then when Antarctic Support Contract took over, she was the deputy director and retired earlier this year. We had Ray Spain that was running Lake Corps, and women were still running Prairie Lab and aviation, and the women run in the carpentry shop and equipment operators and cargo, and Katie Jensen was the South Pole station manager at the time. So when I returned, I was the IT trainer for 3 seasons, which I will say that I trained when we first rolled out Polar Ice for anybody who has to submit their science information packet and still uses Polar Ice to this day. That was happened in 2003. I was the trainer on that. You can thank me. I moved on to being an operations scheduler after that. And in 2005, I moved into the helicopter operations supervisor position. And I got to say that I loved that position. It was my first foray into directly supporting science. I got to meet Terry Wilson, and she and I spent hours trying to get the pilots to go where we wanted them to go. We had to remove all of her TAMDIF instruments that she had installed a couple of years before. I also met Kathy Welch and LTER and supported them, and they were my biggest customer. 250 hours we flew the helicopters with them, and it was so many tiny little movements, and how could we catch up every day? It was great. And then the other thing that I really loved was working with Antarctic New Zealand and how we were woven together, the 2 programs to support world-class science in Antarctica. And then finally was the extended season for the International Polar Year. That was in 2007-08, and it was amazing. I loved that we could support science under the night sky. In 2009, I will warn you that these pictures, I'm just showing a lot of women working in Antarctica. So in 2009, I moved over to fixed wing. You would think that scheduling one aircraft and another aircraft would be the same, but it is not. Helicopters, it's a Tetris game. It's fast, it's move it. In fixed wing, it's a chess game. And one wrong move is not going to go well for you. It's so big, and it's the weather, and it's the distance, and a lot of mechanical issues that we do have with the fixed wing aircraft. And so I will say that Terry Wilson followed me to fixed wing. I don't think it has anything to do with her science, right? So she followed me there, and actually so did LTER. So I stayed in that position for 5 years, and under the time that I was running that work center, I supported the AGAP effort, which was up on the Eastern Plateau outside of Pole. We also supported the Pine Island Glacier. If there was something I learned in fixed wing, it was how to accept failure and also have some great successes. So Pine Island Glacier, unfortunately, the first season that we tried to implement that, it was failed because we couldn't get to that area because of weather. But the next year was wildly successful, and they're still putting papers out for that. I also supported Croesus, the waste ice cores, all of the ice cores came back from Waste Divide. And then there was the Central Transantarctic Mountain Camp. And we put that camp in 1 year with 70 people, and we pulled it out in 1 year with 52 LC-130 flights. And then there was also all the countless little small camps that we supported. So then in 2014, I moved on to my current position, which is the McMurdo Science Implementation Manager. So now I'm no longer running just one single work center, but helping coordinate many centers together. And guess what? I'm still supporting LTER and Terry Wilson. But now, instead of just focusing on just a fixed wing camp or a helo camp, I'm actually working with a variety of groups, whether they work on the sea ice, they're doing atmospheric science out of McMurdo and Arrival Heights, or we're doing helicopter supported camps or fixed wing camps. So it's been a much broader approach to what I've been doing for a long time. Okay. And this is through the years that I've been doing science support. So it's been 15 years that I've started that. So we have, this was the second crew on, I'm gonna move over here. This is at Scott Base, and this was both the Antarctic New Zealand and the USAP group, the United States Antarctic group. And then this is when John McCain came down in 2005. This is out at Cape Royds when we went out and supported Dave Ainley with tagging the chicks, flying around in a helicopter. This is out at Shackleton Camp. Everybody has to have a jumping shot. And then this is me with, most people get a landmark named after them. I get a fuel delta. So did I mention that that was the first, that I worked in the first civilian crew for the fuels department. All right. So probably the biggest and best change that I had in Antarctica was in November of 2008. I met my husband, and I had actually met him in 2003, but we had a relationship in 2008, got married in 2009. I knew I'd meet him in 2008 in November because I'd gone to a tarot card reader in May, and he told me that I would meet my husband. And so, and that's really scientific, so there you go. And we actually, this is at the BFC, and then that was us taking a photo up on one of the fuel tanks because he's been running fuel, he ran fuels at the time. All right, so while we have, we've come a long way, we still have a ways to go. Oops. In the United States, women were nearly half of the labor force, but only slightly over a third of the managers in 2018. Women are 51% of the population, but we only hold 24% of the Congress. And on average, women will only apply, this is most interesting to me. On average, women will only apply for a job if they are 100% qualified, they feel that they are for the job, while men will apply if they feel they're 60% qualified. In 2018, there were more men named James running a Fortune 500 than there were women. In McMurdo, the overall ratio is about 70%. It varies between 65 to 70%, or 65 to 70 men and 30 to 35 women. I think part of the reason why there is such a difference between men and women in Antarctica is that there's so many trades, and men make up about 90% of the trades in the US, whereas it's only 10% for female. So, when I think of the future of Antarctica and how we honor and celebrate the women that have paved the way for us to be a part of the exploration in Antarctica, I think we need to continue our pursuit of leadership roles, continue to balance the work centers, and as a woman, we need to pursue dreams and opportunities. I think of Dr. Lois Jones leading the first all-female team and the hurdles they overcame. To honor them, we must follow in the footsteps of Dr. Jones and her team. I have a list here of all of the women that have taken leadership roles in from 2012 to 2019 under the Antarctic Support Contract. And I will say the final thing I would like to say is that 1992 was the year of the woman, but I believe that it's not just the year of the woman. Ironically, one of my favorite things to do is to get People magazine whenever I fly. And yesterday, I picked this up, and it's about how women are making changes in the world. And so I believe that we're here to stay.